Hey everybody, I want to talk a little bit tonight about the premiere of Agent Carter, a 7-part miniseries that is going to be on ABC, and I am pretty excited about it. I watched the 2-hour pilot last night, and it's interesting because it's a 7-part miniseries, but they put the first 2 parts together as like the 2-hour pilot movie. I went into it thinking it was just going to be an hour, and 9 o'clock rolled around and it just kept going and going up until 10. So the first 2 episodes were Now Is Not the End and Bridge and Tunnel. So Hayley Atwell's back as Agent Carter, and I for one was excited when I heard that they were bringing her back because no one else could play this part. I mean, she's been very involved in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously in Captain America 1 and 2, as well as a couple of guest stints on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she even got her own Marvel short. So it's great to see her back. No one else could play the part. And the 1940 sections were really my favorite part of Captain America the First Avenger. I almost wish that they could have done more movies set in that time period. I know we're going to get some flashbacks here and there. I think I heard a rumor that in Age of Ultron there's going to be a flashback, and we will see more of Agent Carter. But for now, we have the pilot episode of the 7-part miniseries. And I thought it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I know when we last saw Agent Carter, who Roger Ebert described as a classic military pinup of the period, she was trying to talk Steve Rogers, Captain America, out of crashing his plane into the Arctic. And I always wondered in that scene, did he have to crash the plane? I know the fight with Red Skull definitely left the plane with some damage. And I know there was a lot of weapons on board that were very dangerous, but did he have to crash? It was never really clear to me, and she was trying to kind of talk him out of it a little bit, I thought, but he did what he had to do, and they had a really nice goodbye. So I was glad to see that the pilot episode of the Agent Carter miniseries picked up exactly there with footage from the movie. So the continuity was perfect. It picked up right where we left off, not counting the some of the different flashbacks and things like that. I definitely appreciated that. So the sound of the plane engines dissolve into a tea kettle, which I liked, and now we're in New York, 1946. This is a period that I think a lot of people misunderstand. I think the perception is that the war is over, everything's great, everyone's happy, and it's the 1950s. But there was a period there where, there was still a lot going on in Europe. There was still a lot of suffering, in the United States, and GIs and the people who were serving were coming back, and some of the things that they had seen and participated in, you can't go back to regular life. It reminds me of the end of Hurt Locker, when Hawkeye is just shopping for milk. I think I mentioned this once before. So it's an interesting period. It's an interesting period in our country. So I'm excited to see what they can do with it. Now, I'm not expecting, the full-on Mad Men attention to detail. But what I've seen so far, I do like some of the period touches. I think the clothing was nice. The costumes are good. The music is true to period so far. A lot of the props seems like they have done a good job recreating a lot of the things from that time period. So I am enjoying it. I think the offices look good, and the apartments look appropriately depressing. I don't understand what's with the wallpaper. I personally am glad that wallpaper has mainly gone out of style because it's atrocious. In that first apartment where she was with her friend, it's pretty bad. So I personally like any period piece. I'm one of the few people who watched every episode of Pan Am, and I was pretty depressed when they canceled it. I thought it was a pretty fun show. It was light and fluffy, but it was definitely just some good popcorn viewing. I enjoyed the cast, and I just really enjoyed the feel of the period. And that was a very glossy show. So far, I'm definitely seeing some gloss in this show. I'm not getting the feel of the gritty New York City yet, but we'll see what they do in the upcoming weeks. So Peggy takes a look at the newspaper, and Howard Stark is making headlines. And of course, he's played again by Dominic Cooper, who took the role over from John Slattery, Mad Men again. Of course, my boy Roger Sterling. So there's a great montage of her kicking ass in the movie, reminding us that she's more worthy of her own miniseries. I really like the movie clips, and I think the crew has put that in there. You know, the directors put these clips in there to hopefully give us a taste of what's to come. I mean, they're not going to reach the levels of action that we got from Captain America: The First Avenger. That's not what this series is about. But hopefully we can get some of that, you know, a little bit of taste of that action, and we'll get some of the same excitement. So we meet her roommate. It looks like she's working, looks like Peggy's working at the phone company as a cover. So she's walking down the streets of New York, and the sea of Don Draper clones, it really contrasted for me sharply with her fitted blue suit and her red fedora cocked to one side. Definitely enjoyed that. I thought that was a really nice image. She walks past the switchboard, and she enters a secret elevator and enters the Strategic Scientific Reserve, or the SSR. Now, I don't know as much about the lore as I'm sure a lot of people do, but I'm assuming this is a precursor to S.H.I.E.L.D. It seems like it's a little hidden. It's off the radar. This is not NYPD. I feel, for me anyway, like she comes back and she's not being treated as a war hero. So, you know, she's being treated as a secretary, and obviously this is going to give them a lot of opportunity to address head-on, like some of the sexism that was in the workplace at the time. One of the things that I noticed was, you know, when she's asked to cover the phone, she immediately passes it off, and she goes into the briefing room because she's Agent Carter. She's not a secretary; she is an agent, but she's not being treated with the right level of respect. Peggy Carter does not answer phones, so I'm wondering how many episodes it's going to take for her colleagues to realize that she's not just a pretty face around the office. She actually can hold her own against any of them, and probably, I would say, best them. There's a great newsreel about Howard Stark, and it looks like there's in a congressional hearing he's being accused of selling some of his tech to our enemies overseas. And of course, you know, in this time period, you know, these congressional hearings were very common. We're not quite into the realm of Senator McCarthy yet, but we're definitely leading up to that. And it really brought to mind the scene in Iron Man 2 where, of course, his son, Tony, is also being questioned about his technology by Congress. So that's definitely something that he passed on to his son. I thought it was a great scene, and I enjoyed the newsreel. Of course, Howard Stark is suave, and he's very funny. We know where Tony gets it from, and Dominic Cooper really owns the character, so I was really glad that they were able to get him. So it's very unsetting as well, I think, to have congressional hearings like this, so I appreciated that as well. So apparently being Captain America's liaison doesn't carry quite the same weight that I thought it would. I assumed, like I said, that she would be, you know, hailed as a war hero, one of the people who, you know, helped stop Red Skull, and she worked directly with Captain America, but she's not getting any respect so far. So she goes to this automat. We'll get back to that in a second, but she's good friends with Shelley Johnson down at the R&R. Sorry, I mean her waitress friend, Angie, but she reminds me of Shelley Johnson quite a bit. She's very fresh-faced and innocent. So she gets a note to meet in the alley in 5 minutes. And a well-appointed British man, he tries to accost her, and she, you know, beats the crap out of him. And wearing heels, of course. And she pulls a gun on a car about to run her down. Now, you know, who's in the car? We find out immediately that it's actually Howard Stark. And the British gentleman is his butler, Jarvis. So, you know, Stark ends up discussing with her what's going on and what his plan is. I mean, he needs to clear his name. So his butler, Jarvis, is much more than just a rather very intelligent system, or Iron Man's version of Siri. He is, you know, obviously Howard Stark's personal assistant, more or less. So Howard is going to let Peggy use him to his fullest extent, to his abilities, to use his abilities, to help her clear his name. So Jarvis is going to become, you know, a very important character in the miniseries, and in this opening 2 episodes, I really thought that he nailed the part. I quite like him. But we'll talk more about Jarvis in a little bit. So Stark discusses the allegations with Carter, and it seems like he's got these really rare, very dangerous pieces of tech he calls his big baddies. and they're hidden in his vault. And it looks like someone tunneled up into his vault and stole them. So Congress apparently wouldn't put it past him to steal his own tech or to fake it in order to make money on the side. So he needs to find out, who stole it and why. So he mentions that this stuff in the hands of the next Red Skull would be bad news. And the particular big baddie we're chasing at right now is a compound called nitramine. I think I'm saying that right. So now Peggy Carter goes to work. We have a mission. The premise of the show: who stole Howard Stark's tech, and can Agent Carter help clear Stark's name? I like it. I think that's a good goal for 7 episodes. It's not too lofty. It's not too formulaic. It's not saving the world from a nuclear weapon, although in some ways it is. But there's definitely more to it than that. It's they've piled on some layers of mystery that we're going to get into. So I think that it's enough of a premise to hold the show. And this 7-episode run, I wonder if that's going to be it. If it's very successful, will they order more? Obviously time will tell. 2 episodes is not enough to make a final determination on that. So it's definitely a satisfying mystery with loads of opportunity, for spy games and action along the way. So the conceit of the plot is that she can't tell anyone that she's working with him. So she's got to do this in a very clandestine manner. Because no one is going to believe his story, and they think he's a traitor. So if she is helping a traitor, that makes her a traitor as well. So she can't tell anyone. She can't ask the other agents at SSR for help or tell anyone what she's doing. So she has to basically go undercover. So Carter's definitely the star of the show. We get a good sense of what she's all about. Her next day back at work, she lies to her fellow agent to throw him off Stark's trail. This is Daniel Sousa. We'll get to him, in a little bit. But they do have some great character moments together. I thought Sousa was one of the agents that, the character I connected with, and I felt that some of the conversations that he had with Peggy were pretty well done. He apparently lost his leg in the war, so he's to the other agents, he's damaged goods, just like Peggy is, because to them, she's a woman, so they don't understand that her capabilities are just as strong as any of them, and just, so they underestimate her the same way that they underestimate Daniel. So they have a few scenes where they sort of commiserate together, and they form a connection, but, she needs to clear Howard Stark's name, so she is going to throw him off the trail. And him losing his leg too, it's definitely a visceral reminder of some of the damage that the GIs had when they came back. A lot of it was mental, a lot of it was emotional, but definitely in this case, it was physical. And it's a reminder that the war just ended, and Daniel's trying to deal with what he's going through. And I hope that they will explore that a little bit more and flesh that out, and get into a little bit about what he's been through and what he's dealing with now that he's back. So Carter takes she takes a sick day to get out on the street to help Howard and find the fence who can move Stark's stolen goods. So basically, she goes full on Sydney Bristow, and she changes her appearance. She goes to the club to try to talk to the fence with a blonde wig and a dress and an American accent. And then later in the show, she poses as a health inspector looking at all the different milk trucks. So she definitely is a master of disguise, and I like that as well. That's just another, skill she has in her bag of tricks. So I enjoyed that as well. Definitely she's a master of disguise, and she fakes a great American accent too. It actually took me a minute when she shows up at the club, with the red dress and the blonde wig. It took me a minute. I said, "Is that Peggy?" And I couldn't believe it for a second, because she was very, very convincing disguise. So she knocks out the fence, handling Stark's secret formula, and she cracks his safe. And apparently they've weaponized the formula, so they've turned it into these little spheres that are explosive. And I guess you just throw them down, and we find out later what they do, and it's definitely not pretty. So she needs help because one of them has been activated. So she calls Jarvis, and Jarvis, I said we'd get back to his character. I think now's as good a time as any. He is definitely going to be her right-hand man in this, because she doesn't want to admit that she needs anyone's help. But Jarvis points out to her that even Captain America needed her help. So she's going to begrudgingly take his help. And he's definitely a man of skills as well. I really appreciated, how he does all this dangerous work, and then he goes home and he, he drinks sherry at 7, and it's Benny Goodman at 8, and then he's in bed by 9. I like the line where she needs him to come out and do something, and he says, "Okay, I'll just fold my linens." And she says, "Now, Jarvis." And he says, "Okay, I guess I'll forego the linens." So they have a few good character moments as well, where they're sitting at the automat, and they're talking about sort of like their double lives, and how Jarvis has to hide what he's doing from his wife, and obviously Peggy's living a double life where she rents apartments, and she doesn't she doesn't sign the lease in her own name, and she has this fake job at the phone company, so no one knows what she really does. So I really liked that they formed a connection as well. I also know that there's a couple of bad guys, and I know one of them, on the way out after she steals the tech out of the safe, she beats him up with a stapler. And then she catches a cab home to defuse the nitramine with items she finds in her kitchen cabinet. Now, Jarvis did help her, but she knew exactly what he was talking about and how to do it. So just another one of her skills. There's not much that she can't do. She's definitely showing more abilities than she did in the movies, which I like. But so there's 2 bad guys. I got a little bit confused with them. Well, there's 3 if you count the scientist who gets beaten up with the stick later, with the carrot. I got a little confused with that as well. But Leet Brannis is played by James Frain, and he's definitely one bad guy. And I'm looking at him. I'm watching the show, and I'm looking at him. And I'm like, where do I know this guy from? I didn't know, the name James Frain. And I looked him up, and he played Thomas Cromwell on The Tudors, and he was excellent in that. If you've never seen The Tudors, it's worth it season 1 to see Sam Neill as Cardinal Wolsey, and it's definitely worth, I think, season 2 or 3 to see James Frain as Thomas Cromwell. Excuse me, I just said it a second ago. It's Thomas Cromwell. So he's very good. So the other one, I guess everyone's calling him Green Suit. So he breaks into Peggy's apartment and he kills the roommate. Now, I don't know if he was just trying to get rid of witnesses or if he thought that was Peggy Carter, but he kills her. And him and Peggy have a really good close quarters sort of fight, and we know how it's going to end because she can't capture him now. He's clearly going to be the main antagonist, at least for a little while. So she can't capture him, and he can't kill her because she's the star of the show. So we know they're going to get away somehow. So she kicks him out a window, more or less. And that's the last we see of him for right now. But between James Frain and I guess we'll call him Green Suit, we have 2 antagonists right now. And I was getting them a little mixed up just because I wasn't familiar with either of the actors, right away. But it's becoming a little more clear now. They both have, the cut on their throat too. I guess their larynx was, damaged, or I guess it was removed surgically somehow. So they can't speak, which is another interesting part. So we find out that Green Suit has a habit of sticking people's hands to tables with a knife while he interrogates them and then kills them anyway. And he communicates with his boss via this very interesting 2-way typewriter where he types a message and then he waits and the typewriter types back the reply. And this really reminded me of the scenes in Fringe where they would communicate with the alternate universe through a typewriter. I thought that was a really cool idea there, and I'm glad to see that they're using it here. I know they didn't. I'm not saying that they copied it, but I definitely think it's a great idea. So it was pretty creative, and it definitely reminded me of those scenes from Fringe. So it looks like he's working for a group or an entity called Leviathan, and apparently it's less of a who and more of a what. But either way, that's one of the mysteries too. What is Leviathan? What's their agenda? So we'll hopefully find out more about that in the next couple of weeks. And is it just me, or does the Green Suit guy remind you kind of like Ralph Fiennes and the guy who played Principal Rooney in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Just me? I don't know. Look it up. I think he does. So Peggy and Jarvis want to learn a little bit more about the nitramine bombs. So they go to visit Dr. Anton Vanko, who was, of course, the scientist who worked with Howard Stark to produce the first arc reactor, and the father of Whiplash from Iron Man 2. So it was cool to see him. And in a neat little bit of exposition, he explains that the nitramine gives off Vita rays, which is, of course, the same rays that gave Cap his powers. So Peggy starts kind of thinking about him a little bit, and she goes to the archives and starts looking at his file, and she's looking at Steve's picture. And, you know, obviously some of those feelings came back. She's not over him. You know, she'll never be over him. And, you know, she even liked him before he was Captain America, when he was just kind of, you know, weak Steve Rogers. So she starts thinking about him a little bit, and this is where she has that great character moment with Daniel. And I liked that scene quite a bit. I feel like they did a good job interspersing these great character moments with the scenes of action and the explosions and stuff like that. And on that note, the special effects I think are pretty good. The action scenes are well choreographed, and it's just a high quality show so far. So I'm really enjoying it. I feel like if they could flesh out these characters, you know, a little bit more and expand on them in the next 5 parts, they'll definitely have a hit on their hands. So they go to the facility where they're producing the nitramine bombs, and they run into Brannis again, James Frain. And they interrogate him by using, like, I think it's like a voice box, and you know, Agent Carter presses it against his throat, and he's able to speak to her. And she wants to know who's the man in the green suit. And he explains to Peggy that, you know, he doesn't have a name anymore, and that if he shows up, you know, they're dead anyway. You know, they're already dead. So I think that did a good job of, you know, really bringing home the point that this man is very dangerous. You know, Brannis is dangerous in his own right, but he's scared of the man in the green suit. So, you know, who is this guy? That's definitely one of the central mysteries. So he has a whole milk truck full of these nitramine bombs, like hundreds of them, and he throws one down, and they have only like 30 seconds to get out of there. So Peggy calls Jarvis, and she does this great scene where she's running out of the facility, and he's driving, trying to meet her, and she dives like over this fence or something and lands on top of the car, and they make their escape. So behind them, that one nitramine ball explodes, blows up the factory, but then it implodes on itself, and it takes the whole factory, and it condenses it down to just like one big ball of rubble, which they later load on a flatbed truck. And I'm just thinking to myself, did it lose all mass? Because if it kept its mass, it would crush the flatbed truck. But maybe I'm thinking about it just a little bit too much. So unfortunately, as they're driving away, the bumper with the license plate from Howard Stark's car gets sucked into it. So later on, you know, there's a scene where one of the agents is undoing it and looking for evidence, and of course they find the license plate, which is not going to help Howard Stark's case, because now they're going to think that he was there and he was somehow responsible for it. So you know, Jarvis does save Carter. She does need his help. They're a great team. They have, you know, another great scene together, and the entire facility is just this huge ball. I mean, think Beautiful Katamari. It's just like at the end of a level. It's just everything that was there is just crushed in on itself, and that's what this nitramine does. No wonder Howard called it a big baddie. That is dangerous stuff. So the waitress friend, I cannot remember her name for the life of me, wants Peggy to move in with her. And, you know, she can't live at that apartment where her friend was just shot anymore. She wasn't even supposed to be there. But she doesn't want to move in with her because, you know, she likes her friend, and she knows that because of what she does, it's going to put her in danger. So it's a very Spider-Man moment where, you know, she has to protect, you know, the people that she cares about, and she can't get too close. So, you know, we're definitely learning more about how Agent Carter keeps people at arm's length, and she doesn't want anyone's help, and she can't get too close to people. But we see already that some of these barriers are coming down because, you know, she's learning to trust Jarvis. She's opening up to Daniel. And later in the episode, she gives in and she moves in with her friend, even though she knows it could put her in danger. But I think she's looking for that companionship and that friendship. So even just in the first 2 episodes, we really see some character development for her, and I'm wondering if they should have doled that out over a little bit longer of a time period, but already we're seeing a good amount of character depth to her as she's letting go of some of her hang-ups. So the next thing we know, we've got two foreign agents with no voice boxes fighting over a milk truck full of experimental implosives. It's just another day at the office. That's like the tagline for the show right there. I thought that was a pretty cool line. So they have the great scene where they're fighting on top of the milk truck, and in the end, Brannis ends up dying. And as he's dying, he draws this shape sort of in the sand. And, he can't speak, so it's like a heart with like a line through it, and we need to find out what that is. So what are the questions we have for the upcoming episodes? Who is Green Suit? What does he want? Who is on the other end of that typewriter? Leviathan is. I think the line was Leviathan is coming. What is Leviathan? Is it an organization like Hydra? Is it an entity like well, it wouldn't be Galactus, but is it some sort of a being, or is it simply just a person? So I mean, it was explained that it's less of a who, but more of a what. So what is it? If the entire chemical refinery was squashed, would the mass be so light that flatbed truck could carry? That's really bothering me. What the hell is an automat? I actually looked this one up, and it was an automatic sort of restaurant where you would go in and just like you see, I think Peggy buys a sandwich or something like that, and you would put your money in and you take the food out like a vending machine. And I guess they had cooks behind the scenes who were filling up the slots. And this was really popular for a while, like in the 30s and 40s, I guess. They started to get phased out by like fast food, I suppose. And it just got me thinking about the suffix mat, like laundromat. What is that? Why is that there? But it's not very important, but it did get me thinking. So that's what an automat is. So I guess you learn something new every day. What is that symbol that Brannis drew in the sand? What is that heart with a line through it? And were Brannis and Greensuit both members of Leviathan, assuming it is an organization? And why are they having their larynx cut out? What is the point of that? Is it some sort of like a religious ritual, or is there a purpose for it? Were they experimented on? That's a good question. And will we get more of the Captain America radio show? With some excellent Foley work, by the way. I thought that was really good for the setting and really well done. Punching the meat and breaking the lobster. This is what people did on radio shows, and it's really fascinating to me. If in a past life, I'd like to think that I could have got a job as a Foley artist. That would have been a pretty fun gig to have. But more of the Captain America radio show, as Betty Cava tidies up while the men fight the Nazis. I really did enjoy that as well. I thought that was pretty funny. So they do find the license plate in the imploded rubble, so they're going to implicate Howard Stark in the refinery explosion. So trouble is afoot for Agent Peggy Carter in the weeks ahead. I like her style, and I know obviously sexism, was rampant in the workplace then, but things are not going to get better for a long time. It's 1946. I do feel that the subject has been tackled pretty well by another girl named Peggy, who started as a secretary, wasn't respected at all, and ended up as a leader in not only her company but her industry. I don't think in 7 episodes that Agent Carter can hope to get to that level of character depth and social commentary that Mad Men has done over 7 years. But it's good to see them try to scratch the surface on it. Obviously, it's a heavy issue. The gentleman in the automat, the big guy who was just screaming at the waitress, was a little heavy-handed of a caricature. But I appreciate what they're going for. So I mean, will Agent Carter do anything meaningful with workplace inequality other than kind of like a wag of a finger and sort of like a knowing eyebrow kind of raise? I don't think so, but it's obviously it's an extension of a comic adaptation, so the social messages are going to take a backseat to the action, which is the way it should be. But I do appreciate that they're handling the issue. So one final note, after 2 hours and it being promised for, maybe 8 or 9 times, we got the teaser of Ant-Man finally, which is going to be part of, I think, Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That is a tongue twister. I'd recognize Michael Douglas's voice, anywhere. He's got a really great voice, and I'm glad to see him come into the fold as well. And I liked at the end when Ant-Man says, "Can we change the name?" Because it's definitely something that I think a lot of people raise an eyebrow at if they're not fans of the comic, which I wasn't a fan of the Ant-Man comics. But I'm definitely looking forward to the movie. It seems like it'll be pretty good. I'm not as excited about it as I would be for like an Iron Man 4 or for Captain America 3 or even for Thor 3. I do quite enjoy Thor. But cool teaser, a little bit overhyped. They just kept mentioning it, and of course they do it at the very end. But such is life. So the World War II pieces of Captain America: The First Avenger were my favorite part. I really enjoyed them. So I'm glad to come back to that time period and spend more time with some of these characters, and just spend more time in this world. I'm excited about the show. I thought the first 2 episodes did good for creating the setting and some good character moments. And I'll see you guys next week for episode 3. Thanks for watching.